Hey there. Ever feel like you're standing at the bottom of this, like, mountain,
Yeah.
Like, you've got the map to get to the top to, like, I don't know, peak motivation or something,
Mm.
but you just can't seem to take that first step.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
It's like we're all standing there with our hiking boots all laced up, ready to ditch the procrastination and create a life that's just bursting with happiness and purpose, but
But there's something holding us back.
exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We've got these three incredible guides all about motivation, happiness, and confidence. And because they all kind of connect,
Uh-huh.
like puzzle pieces, revealing this bigger picture of how these things all work together to help us actually reach that peak motivation.
It's amazing how these topics, they're not just these isolated things, you know? Once you start to kind of weave them together, it's like you get this much deeper understanding of how to live a more fulfilling life, wouldn't you say?
100%. And that's what makes these deep dives so interesting. You never know what connections we'll uncover.
Mm.
So let's jump right in with this first guide, the one all about building unstoppable motivation. Right off the bat, it throws out this really intriguing idea: motivation. It's not something you wait for. It's like a skill, something you can actually build.
Like, don't just sit around waiting to be motivated. Go out there and be the motivation. Love that.
Right. It's so true, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
We often get stuck thinking we need to feel motivated to get started. But this guide is saying, nope, do it anyway. The motivation will follow.
It's so counterintuitive. But when you think about it, it makes sense, you know? How many times have you put off doing something like a big project or a workout because you just weren't feeling it? And then once you actually forced yourself to start, suddenly.
Suddenly you're in the zone. The motivation just kind of kicks in.
Exactly. It's like our brains are almost wired to procrastinate sometimes. Think about it from like an evolutionary standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Our ancestors, they weren't exactly sitting around planning out their 5-year goals while they were chasing gazelles, you know? They were focused on more immediate needs and rewards.
It's true. I've never thought about it like that. It's like our brains are still playing catch up with this whole modern life thing, all these long-term goals and delayed gratification. It's a lot for our ancient brains to handle. But, just because our brains are a little behind the times, that doesn't mean we're doomed to a life of procrastination. This guide has some great strategies for tricking our brains into action. Have you ever heard of the 5 whys method?
Oh, the 5 whys. Classic, simple, yet so powerful. It's like this deceptively simple trick to really uncover the why behind your goals, you know?
Yes. So let's say your goal is to finally conquer that, I don't know, that mountain of laundry that always seems to be multiplying in your bedroom. Instead of stopping at, I want to do laundry because it needs to get done, keep asking yourself why.
Because you need clean clothes. Why?
Because wearing clean clothes makes me feel good. Why? Because feeling good makes me more productive. Why? You get the idea. It's like by the time you get to that 5th why, you've unearthed this deeper motivation that you probably didn't even realize was there.
Totally. And that's the fuel. It's not just laundry anymore. It's about boosting your confidence or showing up as your best self. That's what keeps you going, even when you're facing down a mountain of socks.
Seriously, uncovering that deeper why. It's like finding the turbo boost for your motivation.
Mhm.
And speaking of finding ways to get things moving, this guide also talks about the 2-minute rule. You familiar with this one?
Oh, absolutely. Game changer, especially for overcoming that initial hurdle of just getting started.
Tell me about it. It's the worst.
Right. So the 2-minute rule, it's all about tricking your brain. Feeling overwhelmed by a task, no problem. Just tell yourself, I'm only going to do this for 2 minutes. That's it.
Yeah.
And more often than not, 2 minutes is all it takes to kind of break through that resistance, you know?
And suddenly you're like 10 minutes in and
Right.
you're on a roll.
Exactly.
So whether you're trying to like finally tackle that big project at work, clean out that junk drawer that's been bugging you forever,
Mhm.
or even just like get up and go for a walk, remember,
Yeah.
2 minutes. That's all it takes to get started.
I love that. Small steps, big wins.
Small steps, big wins for sure. This actually leads to a concept that's highlighted in the Happiness Guide, The Power of Aligning Your Actions with Your Core Values. And it ties into this idea of small steps perfectly.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So it's not just about doing any random small action. It's about choosing actions that actually resonate with what matters to us.
Exactly. It's about connecting those small steps to a bigger why.
Okay, now this is where it gets really good, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about checking things off a to-do list. It's about creating a life that actually feels meaningful.
100%. And that's where those core values come in. It's all connected. Like what really lights us up, what gives our life meaning. That feeling of, yeah, this is what it's all
Or
about.
core values, right? The guide kept mentioning those.
Exactly. Your core values are kind of like your guiding principles. And when your actions are actually aligned with those values, it just brings this deep sense of fulfillment. Think about things like creativity, connection, adventure, learning, whatever really resonates with you.
So, what I'm hearing is, it's not about forcing ourselves to be more motivated or productive just for the sake of it. It's about tapping into that deeper sense of purpose and letting that be our guide. Am I on the right track?
You're getting it. And you know what? This guide makes a really interesting point. It says that when we're living out of sync with those core values, that's when we start to feel that kind of, that is this all there is feeling. It's like we're not quite living up to our own potential.
I get that. It's like that feeling of just going through the motions.
It's like driving with the parking brake on, You might eventually reach your destination, but it's not going to be a smooth ride.
That is such a good analogy. And it makes perfect sense. If what we're doing every day doesn't actually line up with what we truly value, no wonder we feel unfulfilled.
Exactly. It's like we're living on autopilot instead of consciously designing a life that we love. And that's why taking the time to actually sit down and really figure out, okay, what are my core values? It's so important.
It's like creating a roadmap for a life that feels truly aligned with who we are. I love that. So we've got our why figured out. We're starting to tap into those core values.
Yeah.
What about confidence? How does that all fit in? It feels kind of elusive sometimes.
Well, remember how we were talking about those small wins being like these little boosts of motivation?
Yeah, those are good.
Well, it turns out that same principle, those small wins, they're also key for building confidence, especially when it comes to, facing our fears. And this confidence guide, it actually takes this to a whole new level with this concept they call, get this, micro rejections.
Micro rejections. Okay, now I need to hear more about this.
All right, so picture this. Instead of just avoiding any situation where you might encounter rejection or judgment, you actually kind of intentionally put yourself out there in these small, manageable ways.
Okay, so instead of doing a cannonball into the pool of potential awkwardness, you're dipping your toes in first.
You got it. You're basically giving yourself these little confidence workouts, intentionally facing those little fears that might normally hold you back.
So give me an example. What would a micro rejection look like in real life?
Let's see. Maybe it's speaking up in a meeting when you'd usually stay quiet, or maybe sharing an idea that you're a little unsure about, or even just trying something new, even if you might not be an expert right off the bat.
I see, I see. So each micro rejection, no matter how small, it's like a little victory, little chip away at that fear of being judged.
It's like building a resilience muscle. And as you kind of rack up those small wins, you start to realize, hey, even if I do face rejection down the road, which, let's face it, is going to happen, I can handle it.
It's not the end of the world.
Exactly. It's a shift in perspective from, oh, I have to avoid rejection at all costs, to, okay, rejection is just a part of life and I can handle it.
Love that. So we're building resilience. What else can we do to cultivate that unshakable confidence?
It's interesting. Both the confidence guide and the motivation guide talked about this. The power of who you surround yourself with.
Oh, it's like that saying you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly. But I like to think about it as being really intentional about surrounding yourself with people who are positive, who inspire you, who support you.
It's like building your own personal dream team. The people who make you feel like you can conquer the world.
Now you're talking. And it's amazing. It creates this really cool cycle because when we're surrounded by people who believe in us, it not only boosts our own confidence, but it also inspires us to show up as our best selves for them, too.
It's like this beautiful upward spiral of awesomeness. But I have a question. We can't always have our cheerleading squad right there with us. What about those moments when we're on our own and those doubts start to creep in? How do we build that inner confidence, that kind of that we can tap into whenever we need it? Like an inner reserve of, I've got this.
Yeah, like an inner confidence reserve. I like that. It might sound simple, but both the happiness and confidence guides talk about this. Celebrating your wins.
Wait, really? Just like acknowledging your accomplishment?
Exactly. Even the small ones. We often just kind of brush past them, like, okay, on to the next thing. But taking a moment to really celebrate those wins, it's huge.
I guess it's like you wouldn't run a marathon and then just keep running like nothing happened, right?
Exactly. You'd celebrate that accomplishment, you'd let it sink in. And building confidence, it's kind of the same thing. Each time you step outside your comfort zone, face a fear, achieve a goal, celebrate it.
I love that. So what, like, give myself a high five, do a little dance.
Whatever works for you. The point is to really acknowledge that win and let that sense of accomplishment build.
Okay, ready for another tactic?
Hit me with it. Remember how we were talking about environmental cues before? Like how our surroundings can impact our habits?
Yeah, that was interesting. Setting up your environment for success.
Well, it turns out that applies to confidence too. It's like if you surround yourself with things that inspire you, that remind you of your strengths, you're just naturally going to feel more confident.
So like what, having a vision board with inspiring quotes and pictures of people you admire.
Exactly. Or even just putting up little reminders of your own accomplishments. It's like you're creating this environment that constantly reinforces that, hey, you've got this feeling.
I'm totally picturing a confidence corner now, complete with fairy lights and everything.
Go for it. Make it your own.
Uh-huh.
The point is, over time, those external reminders, they start to become internalized. And you're building that inner confidence reserve without even realizing it.
This has been amazing. We've covered so much ground today. We talked about motivation being a skill you can build, not just a feeling. We dove deep into aligning our actions with our core values. We even faced our fears with those micro-rejections.
Don't forget those small wins and the power of designing our environment for success.
Right. It's like all these elements work together to create this more fulfilling and empowered life. It's not about waiting for it to happen. It's about actively creating it.
That's the key takeaway right there. And, as we wrap up this deep dive, it makes me think, what if the secret to unlocking greater motivation, happiness, confidence, all of it, what if it's not about finding ourselves, but about creating ourselves? Through the choices we make, the actions we take, the environments we create.
It's about taking the driver's seat and designing a life that we're excited to live every single day. And, with everything we've learned today,
Yeah.
I have a feeling that our listeners are ready to do just that.
I think so too. It's been great chatting with you today. And for everyone listening, remember you've got this.